Welcome back to the slow burn. Today we are discussing rosin over resin. What are they? How are they made? Is one stronger? Is one better? And which modern herb co-products can you find them in? Stay tuned. Tell me, what is rosin? Let's start there.
So rosin is a solventless concentrate. I'd say it's like kind of known as like the maybe cleanest or kind of simplest form of making a cannabis concentrate.
And a concentrate is typically what you have in like dabs and stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Also a video we just made. And so what is resin?
Resin is going to be that same, concentrating down, whether, again, both of these can be from CBD or THCA plants. Big distinction is you're using a solvent.
So with rosin, you're not using a solvent. And with resin, am I doing it right?
Yeah,
with resin,
exactly.
You are using a solvent.
And don't feel bad. It's like literally probably the most confusing distinction, I'd say, in my experience in the industry. But
Right.
people that I've worked in the industry for a decade that still kind of confuse the two.
You're like,
So
what's the difference?
yeah, it's one small letter between them, but they're like vastly different.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit more about, so there's a solvent in resin, and then there's not a solvent in rosin. And how does that make them so vastly different?
Yeah. So rosin first starts from hash. So to make you take, the cannabis plant, again, whether it's CBD or THCA, the same.
Mm-hmm.
And you either there's a lot of ways to make hash, but the most common are like ice water, like bubble hash. So I'm using ice and water to separate off the trichomes, which are like these little, like, think of like water balloons with THC and terpenes in there that we want on like microscopic level.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's a pretty image.
Yeah. So you either can use like ice and water to pull those guys off.
Okay.
Or you can use, it's called dry sift, where you're essentially like, think of like, you're sifting off with just like a screen to pull off the trichome. So either way, I've now separated the trichome heads from all the plant material.
Okay.
And then I take that hash and then press it with like a big press and heat. Like how rosin first started, people were using like hair straighteners.
Really?
To actually like press, and that was like some of the first rosin getting made, I believe. Where some heat and pressure is then what separates the hash and gets
extract it out.
Exactly, get those trichome heads to separate from the concentrate. And so that's all you're using is essentially make the hash with water or some kind of sift, and then heat and pressure. So then there's no solvent used in that.
Is one then considered better? Is the one rosin, since there's no solvent, does that make it better? Or is there really a difference?
My personal opinion, I just think, I don't know, maybe it's a little too diplomatic. I just say they're different.
Yeah.
I think rosin has a lower yield. It's more, you need to really watch the material that goes in. It's like very finicky. Some strains don't wash well to rosin, some do. So it's more of a craft process for sure.
Okay.
But then resin, it's more scalable. We can, make a lot more strains will yield well with live resin as opposed to rosin, so we can do a lot more with it. But there's some technical details, like technically speaking, I think you might get more terpene in live resin, in my personal opinion, as opposed to rosin. So I just say they're different, and it just depends like what you're going for.
Can you explain the loss of terps in rosin due to temperature?
With resin first, we're keeping that fresh frozen, whole plant. Again, in the last video that we went through on live resin, like how it's made. These plants are frozen the whole time. They stay in a freezer, and then when we extract it, we're actually putting that at like -40. So it's like super cold, subcritical temperatures, and it stays that way all through the process. So terpenes are like naturally will off gas at like room temperature. They'll start to like disappear, and because these are frozen the whole time with live resin, you keep all of those terpenes. They're all sequestered throughout the whole process, and they don't go anywhere. And then you get arguably more in your final extract. Whereas when you make rosin, you're taking that hash, and when you put it through the press, you're getting some temperatures over like 100, 120 degrees. And there's evidence to show that some terpenes will off gas at like 100, 120 degrees. So there are terpenes that if I ran the same strain through rosin versus a resin process, you would get more terpenes in that resin because there's some that are just going to naturally off gas in the rosin process that you would lose. So technically speaking, I would say that, yeah, there's going to be more terpene content in the resin then.
Okay. And that's what you're talking about too, a little bit, just with rosin, like the process being a little bit, it seems like you have to be a little more conscious of the way you're crafting that.
Even like with making the hash, if you like, are like rough with making your ice water hash, those little water balloons, the trichome heads we were talking about, you can break those open in the process. And then when you go to make your rosin, it all comes out like really brown and like just not the quality you're looking for. So like every step has to be like really intentional, and it's like you can mess it up a lot in the way. Not to say that resin's like super easy. You still have to be mindful, but we can create a much more consistent product with resin as opposed to rosin has like more finicky touch points to it.
Do you have products that are made with rosin?
We do.
Okay, so you have both.
We do, yeah. More genuinely, more commonly, most of our products do have a base of live resin, whether it's like our edibles have, real authentic like CBD live resin, or our uncut vapes have both CBD and THCA live resin, whereas we have rosin dabs out currently in a few different varieties, a few different options. We are looking at considering putting those into vapes to have like a true solventless vape option. Let us know if you guys are interested in that.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, looking at some options, but currently they're available just in the dabs, in 1 gram dabs for rosin.
Does rosin or resin have a higher potency?
The final form extract are both going to be around 60 to 70%, THCA or CBDA, right? We can make either here. The concentrates will be roughly about the same, around 60 to 70%. Now
It's just, it seems like it's a little bit, it takes more time and more effort. So therefore it's probably going to just be more expensive for that reason.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, a couple things, like sometimes, there's a good in, good out, the inputs. So you have to really watch the inputs that go into rosin. Same thing with resin, but maybe to a lesser degree. But I think the bigger determining factor for rosin having a higher cost is, yes, the process is more intense, so like more labor intensive. We have pretty scaled equipment on live resin that we can put things through like semi-automated machinery, whereas rosin has a lot more manual process. But I think the biggest thing is just the yield. We see like a 4% yield on a good live resin extraction, whereas you're more like 1 to 2%. So on rosin. So the same flower, if I put it through either way, I'm more than likely going to get a higher yield, like more oil back when I make live resin than when I make rosin.
So for you guys too, it's not that you recommend one or the other, but you just want to have both options available for your clients in case like people have a preference.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just depends on your mood or what you're feeling. For me personally, again, I think rosin has like the most you just like true to plant profile. It tastes just so much. It's like kind of like unprocessed in that sense, whereas live resin will have a really high terpene content and still be a good expression. But there's just a different note, because I feel like different terpenes come through with the resin than you get with the rosin.
Yeah.
And I've seen like our GMO, for instance, like seen it go both ways, and they just taste different.
Yeah.
And it's like preference is what you decide is better, I guess.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for explaining that all. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below, and we'll see you next week.
Exciting.
Bye.